There are probably 5,000 different varieties of peyote stitch, both flat, tubular, one drop, two drop, you name it. We are going to focus on diagonal peyote stitch today, which is really just a kind of modified circular or tubular peyote stitch. But it can cause some problems on getting it set up. So if you're familiar with some of my patterns, I believe in doing components and starting and stopping and segments, because starting and stopping your beadwork and getting the right base for what you're trying to make is sometimes the most complicated part. And then once you get the base set up, it's just a bunch of repetitious stitches from there to get the length, the size, or the look of what you're trying to do. So I found these great crafting beads at Michael's in the kids crafting section. They're called perler beads. They are the perfect shape and size to show you for demonstrating with cylinder seed beads or delica beads because they fit together really nicely and they have the perfect shape. Sometimes I like to demonstrate with the old faithful pony beads like you see here. We all know what those are, but they're a lot of fun to play with as well. And sometimes when we're learning a new stitch, it's nice to work with the largest beads that you can, just so that you get used to seeing the pattern and how the beads sit, as well as how to hold them and what the stitch is supposed to look like when it's completed properly. We have the standard flat peyote stitch. We've used this a lot in bracelets. This is great to use for so many different applications. And one of the telltale signs of peyote stitch is the up, down, up, down, up, down structure of beading. And we bead back and forth and back and forth. We should all be familiar with that. If you're not familiar with this, I recommend that you do something in flat peyote stitch and maybe even tubular before trying the diagonal. Speaking of tubular peyote stitch, this is tubular. I made it really big just so it could make a nice little circle here. And you can see we work this in a circle going around and around and around. And we have the same up, down structure when we are working a tubular peyote. And there's lots of different ways of doing that too. So it's a great stitch that a lot of people use. Now for the diagonal, what we can see here is it creates this nice slanted pattern that can be used for so many different things. And basically, I want to show you here, we have our up, down, and we have like two sides of the street where we're going to work it going this way and then come around the other way, and we work it in a circular type of pattern to our stitching, but it is in a flat form. And basically, if you take a look at the tubular peyote, if I just flatten it in half, and I want to do it so that the up downs match because that's more like what we're going to be working on. This is basically the same thing as your diagonal peyote. You've got your up downs, you got two sides of the street, and it's flat. You can have different colors on each side. So if you think about it that way, and if you're really familiar with tubular peyote, that may make this whole process a lot easier for you. So one of the characteristics of diagonal peyote is I am working a simultaneous increase to the beadwork and decrease on the opposite end at the same time. So each round of beadwork, I am doing an increase and a decrease. So here on this sample, I'll show you, this is the side where we are increasing. See, it has a little extra yellow or edge color bead. And a decrease where it has one less, or not really one less, but like a step down in the edge color. Using two different colors like this makes it really easy to learn the diagonal peyote stitch and where you want your beads to be, as well as which bead to add to your project next. I like to use the 3 color so that I have an alternate color on a different side. If I'm making a pendant, I could wear it this side out, one day, and I could wear it that side out that other day, and I kind of have a 2-for-1. Or like in the case of these earrings here, sometimes I will make the, I'm working backwards here, I'll make the middle section in the alternate color. I'll flip it around. And I'll do that as well with the pendant, so that I have a pendant with the white and bronze on one side and maybe an alternate color on that middle piece, and the pendant will be the same. So let's get started with how to set up our diagonal peyote stitch. First thing, of course, you're going to need is a comfortable length of thread to work on, and I'm going to use the 3 colors of beads, just like in my sample here. However, I ran out of green beads, and I'm going to substitute those for the blue, okay? So we are going to make this situation here. Now, I have a couple different patterns online that call for the diagonal peyote stitch, and there are, it is a little tricky to set it up, and that's why I like to work in kind of a component fashion, so that you can get practice of setting up and finishing off your diagonal stitches repetitiously, so that you get more comfortable with the stitch. So here I've loaded up my thread, and you can see that I have 2 of the edge color beads, 4 of the first middle color, 4 of the other edge color beads, 4 of the second middle color, and 2 of the edge color beads. Take a look at that. And you are going to circle back through all of those from the tail side. Go straight through everything that you just added. So even though this needle is thicker than what I'm used to for regular bead weaving, it's a little shorter, and my beads are bigger, so I feel a little cumbersome trying to get those to work there. Now, when I pull this through, it makes a nice little circle, and my thread is coming out between the 2 edge beads on one side of the work. And I'm going to fold this in half to create the 2 sides of the street that I'm going to work on. You can see that on each side I have 2 edge color beads, 4 of the middle color, and 2 edge color beads on both sides of the street. Okay? The very first thing I want to work on is my increasing side. So where I'm coming out of the beadwork right now, I am going to add 2 beads. Okay, did I only add 1? I hate when that happens. Okay, 2 edge color beads. All right, and then position them. They don't want to sit nicely the first couple of rounds, so we're going to have to help them along. And then I'm going to peyote stitch 2 of the side color beads. So peyote, I'm going to add 1. I'm going over top of a edge color, and then I'm going to peyote another 1. And I am on top of a middle color bead. Here we go. Stay. There we go. And now I am at the other side of my beadwork, and this is the edge that I want to do a decreasing stitch on. So on this side, I am going to add 1 edge color bead, and kind of like peyote stitch, I'm going to go into the 1 edge bead from the previous round, go through him, and instead of going through these 2 guys at the very end, I'm going to skip over them, and I'm going to go straight across the street Let's get them to sit nicely upright. I'm going to go across the street here into the last edge color bead from my first round. Pull through. Now, try to keep your beads positioned properly so that you can see where to go next and which bead needs to be added into the program. We're going to add one edge color bead, and if you notice, he is going on top of that second middle color. And then I'm going to peyote 2 middle color beads. One. I guess there's landscapers out today. Sorry for that extra noise. And 2. Now when I go in through this last middle color bead on the second side, I'm going to pull through to the end of my beadwork. I'm coming out the tip. Okay, let's squish these guys back together so that it looks like it's supposed to. All right, and you see I'm back at the point where I started on the increasing side of my work. We'll do a couple more rounds so you get used to it. We are going to add 2 edge color beads. And this will be your repetitive stitch going forward. Add 2 edge color beads, peyote 2 middle color beads. 1, 2. Now I'm at the decreasing side over here. So I'm going to add 1 edge color bead. Thread. And I'm going to cross the street into the corresponding edge color bead on the other side to anchor him in. And going down the other side of my beadwork, I'm going to add 1 edge color bead and peyote 2 of the middle color beads. 1. Hey, I didn't grab a bead, did I? How rude. It's hard to work when you have a camera like right in front of where you're trying to put your hands. 1, 2. And I'm going to come out the point on my side here. Now, you can see that our shape is starting to form. It's still a little wobbly and wiggly, and yours will be too. And that's okay. Make sure you keep your tension. Pull at the end of each go round so that you get a nice tight feel. And this will firm up your work as you continue to add rounds to it. We're going to add 1 or 2 more rounds just so that you get used to the pattern, but also see the shape really start to take place. So from the increasing end, we add 2 edge beads. And peyote 1, 2 middle beads. Then we add 1 edge color bead and cross the street. See there? I'm going to add 1 edge color bead. Come on through. Okay, and 2 middle color beads. 1 and 2. And poke out the end. Easier said than done, right? Okay, come on through. You're the next contestant. There we go. Okay, I'm running a little bit out of thread, and it's getting a little tricky for me to work with that. But you can see the diagonal pattern has really started to form here. The one thing you want to notice is that every time you go on, and this is kind of a visual, you can see that there is one more edge bead added here. And when you are coming down that side of the street and you're adding the middle color beads, the second middle color bead should always be on top of a previous round's edge color bead. That's how you know you're still stitching with the right color in the right place. If you have a yellow on a yellow, then that might give you an indication that you missed something somewhere or you have a bead in the wrong place. When you are starting the stitch after adding the increase, the same thing is on the other side. The yellow and the red color beads should be on top of each other in a nice diagonal pattern on both sides. Now, you want to make sure that you count the edge color beads on both sides of your work to make sure that you have done a complete round around your work and you're ready to change direction. So like in these particular earrings, each tier has a different count of rows. And the way you want to count the rows is starting from the very tippy top. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make sure you check on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As long as they're equal, you've done the same number of rows on each side of your beadwork, and your change of direction will work out correctly. We are ready to switch directions, which is going to make the chevron shape of this particular component. Here I have stopped. I have counted both sides of my work, and I know that they are equal. I am coming out of the side that was where I was continuing to do the increases down here, and this was my side for the decreases. Okay, I no longer want to increase. I'm done increasing. I'm going to go the other direction now. So I'm not going to add any beads in this round. I'm simply going to needle through to the other side of the point and effectively cross the street. That's a terminology we used in the setting up the first section, so I'm going to use the same terminology of crossing the street. Now, I know I want to go in this direction, so my yellows kind of have to line up. I'm going to do one yellow edge bead color, and then I'm going to peyote 2, 1, that sounded weird, and 2. Okay, now this is going to be my new increasing side. So just like I did before, I'm going to add 2 beads at the same time and come over to the other side. There we go. And sometimes you have to make them sit the right way, the first couple of stitches. Look at that. Now, on this side, I've already added the yellow, so I am not going to add another yellow. I am going to add the mid-color bead, which is going to peyote 2 of them. 1 and 2. This is my new decreasing side. So my yellows are going to kind of line up for this one stitch. I'm going to go through that same point bead that I went through last time. And now when I come over to the other side, I'm going up 2. See how I have to go through those 2? That's okay. That is going to make my point part a little firmer so that it really gives the shape a nice look at the end. Now I'm coming back around in this direction and I can see that this is now my decreasing side. So I'm going to have to add my 1 edge bead and peyote 2 of the middle color beads. 1, 2. This is now my increasing side, so we're going to add 2 of the edge beads. Make them sit right. Okay, come on over. And now you see that little point is starting to form, and I know the first thing I need to do is peyote 2 middle color beads. And then I'm going to add 1 edge bead. Now, this will start to look super familiar from the first line of beads that you did. We're not going to go through the point anymore. We're going to cross the street. So we cross the street, and this time we're going through 2 beads. So from now on, when we come around the other side of the street after our decrease, we're going to go through 2 of the existing edge color beads and then add a new edge color bead. And peyote 2 middle color beads. 1, 2. Great. And now you see we're back at the point here where we are going to do our increase in adding 2 of the edge color beads. Da, 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 da. Come on. Okay. And peyote 2 middle color beads. Just like that. Okay, so you can really see that that point is starting to form. Well, it has formed, but the other side is starting to come into shape, and it's beginning to look like the chevron. Now, when you are working on making the chevron, you want an equal number of rounds on the left side as well as on the right side. So when you are counting your edge beads like we did before, you want to make sure that you're counting both the edge that is what do you call this, like in the nook, in the crevice, and the all of the beads that are on the outer edge. So if I was to count it right now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to make sure to count that shared one. And on here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You would think that that was even, but you can see that I have not finished this round. So if I go on this side, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So something's missing, right? I know I need to finish that round. I'm going to finish that round by peyoteing my 2 middle color beads. You always want to make sure that you have the same number of edge color beads on all sides of your work before you continue or stop the beadwork. And here I'm adding that last edge color bead. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And even on the other side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Absolutely perfect. So let's say this is the shape that I wanted to end on. The last thing I want to show you is how to finish off the edges. In these earrings, we finish off the edges and then we use an eye pin to go through those edge beads and create a loop that we can connect each component to and the chain at the top. So you may have some other configuration that you want to do, but this is how you can have a nice finished clean edge and be able to finish off your work. From wherever edge you're at, you want to needle up past the last bit here of your edge beads, okay? And we're going to peyote stitch the edge color bead only all the way to the top. So that's 1, 2, and 3 beads total. Now, in one of my other patterns, I also put a bead this way on the tippy top of my of the diagonal component. And the reason for that one is because we end up using that bead to put a jump ring through to connect it to another component. So you can add that bead in if you want to create another top or tip. But for the chevron pattern that we're looking at right now, we're not using that. So I'm going to take it out to hopefully avoid some confusion. And we're simply going to cross the street. Now we go down this side of the beadwork, we're going to zip these two sides together. So if you know anything about peyote stitch, zipping is a very common term. We use it to connect everything together. And this is how we're going to close off the edge. So we have a nice, instead of a gap or an opening that could eventually make this tube look ratty or opened up, maybe a little funky on the edges. Now, since this is only like, a few beads, I like to stitch through all of the beads before I pull tightly to zip the two sides. So I'm just going to go back and forth from left to right. Left side, right side, left side, right side, all the way to the end like that. And once I get to the bottom here, I will pull snugly, and you see how all of those edge beads kind of close in between the red side and the blue side and just kind of finish that off. Now, if I am doing the chevron earring or necklace pattern, I am going to use these beads, these edge beads here, is what is used to put in the eye pin for connecting the components. You can see it would slide right through there. You want to make sure that you don't add extra rounds of thread in those beads, otherwise you're going to make the hole really hard to get into. If the eye pins won't go in, sometimes you kind of have to just wiggle the beads a little bit so that the eye pin can slide past the thread and get in there, or try a thinner gauge wire for your eye pins and make sure that it can get in there without cracking or snapping a bead in half. And then of course you make the loops on both ends so that you can join them together. Now I'm at the very end of my piece. I've got this extra piece of thread. What am I going to do with it? Just stitch through your other beads, following along so that your thread hides in the ditch of those beads and gets sucked in there. You can put a little hitch knot somewhere, or you can just run your thread through as much as possible so that you can trim it close to the beadwork, and it's not going to get become unraveled or escape the work and leave a little tail out somewhere. Same thing with the tail from where we started. On this side, you're also going to need to leave enough of a thread that you can add those edge beads and do the zip work at the very end so that both sides look the same and are nice and tidy and closed up, and then hide your threads. So that is how you would finish off a chevron shaped piece. I hope that answers all of your questions and gets you started and completing your diagonal peyote stitch in a nice and easy format. If you have any other comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to add those in the comment section of the video. Or if you have any recommendations of other stitches that you would like to see or how things work, I'll be happy to demonstrate those as well. If you'd like to connect with me, I am on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and I don't know, is there any more? Something. I'll put it on the screen. Until then, thank you very much and enjoy beading. Bye.